Can you believe there was a moment in 1996 when every kid in America watched Michael Jordan get sucked down a golf hole into a cartoon universe, thought, yeah, that tracks, and went home wanting to be both him and Bugs Bunny at the same time? Space Jam hit theaters on November 15th, 1996, and it did something that shouldn't have worked on paper or anywhere else. It dropped Michael Jordan, three-time NBA champion, the most recognizable athlete on the planet, into a hand-drawn cartoon universe and made it feel completely natural. Jordan played himself, a recently retired superstar hiding out in the minor leagues, recruited by Bugs Bunny to save the Looney Tunes from alien enslavement. Tom Hanks couldn't have carried that premise. Jordan made it feel inevitable. Anthony Edwards was Goose, the best wingman in cinema history. Wait, wrong movie. Wayne Knight was Stan Podolak, the most loyal, most useless publicist in any sport. And Bill Murray showed up in the fourth quarter, like he'd been there the whole time, which he absolutely had not. Directed by Joe Pytka, produced by Ivan Reitman, built by 700 animators across 18 studios, Space Jam grossed $250.2 million worldwide against an $80 million budget and generated over $1 billion in merchandise before the decade was out. Today we're getting into 15 facts you didn't know about Space Jam, the shoe Jordan wore without permission, the NBA dynasty assembled on a movie set in Burbank, and the grief hiding at the center of the silliest blockbuster of the decade. Before we dive in, hit like and subscribe for more deep dives into the movies that shaped us, and share this with the friend who still owns a Toon Squad jersey. Now, let's get into it with number 15. Number 15, the Super Bowl ad that became Space Jam. In 1992, Nike released a Super Bowl ad called Hair Jordan, 60 seconds. Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny playing basketball together, directed by Joe Pytka, conceived by Jim Riswold at Whedon plus Kennedy. USA Today rated it the #1 Super Bowl ad of the year. Jordan told Riswold it was his kid's favorite commercial. Because of Bugs Bunny, not him, not his fans, not Nike executives, his kids. That detail landed with David Falk, Jordan's agent, who looked at the ad's performance, looked at the merchandise potential of combining the world's most famous athlete with the world's most recognizable cartoon characters, and pitched a feature film to Warner Brothers. Not a filmmaker, not a studio executive, a sports agent who thought it had merchandising potential. Here's the thing, Falk wasn't wrong, he was catastrophically right. The film he pitched from a shoe commercial would gross $250.2 million worldwide. The merchandise tied to it would generate $1.2 billion in retail sales. The shoe worn in the film would become, 20 years later, the single largest product launch in the history of Nike. And the director Falk's pitch eventually landed on? Joe Pytka, the same man who shot the original 60-second ad, the same director, the same characters, the same fundamental idea, scaled from 1 minute to 87. Most Hollywood blockbusters can trace their origins to a novel, a comic book, a pitch meeting in a conference room. Space Jam traces its origin to a father mentioning to a shoe advertiser that his kid couldn't get enough of a cartoon rabbit. One conversation, one agent who smelled merchandise. A cultural empire that nobody planned. Number 14. Michael Jordan saved Bugs Bunny. The man who saved Bugs Bunny wasn't an animator, a studio executive, or a Warner Brothers vice president. He was a basketball player who was temporarily between careers. By the mid-1990s, Bugs Bunny's main stage was Saturday morning reruns. That's it. That's where America's most beloved cartoon character had ended up. No theatrical feature since compilation films in the 1970s. No cultural moment, no new audience. The Looney Tunes franchise, which had outsold Disney merchandise for 2 straight decades in the 1940s and 1950s, back when Bugs was more popular than Mickey Mouse, was coasting on old footage and fading goodwill. Warner Brothers knew they needed to relaunch the franchise. They had no idea how. Then, a shoe commercial with Jordan and Bugs together in 60 seconds showed them exactly what was possible. The Nike pairing, Jordan and Bugs on the same court, demonstrated something Warner Brothers hadn't been able to prove on their own, that Bugs Bunny could hold his own next to the most famous athlete on the planet. The character still had it. He just needed the right co-star. Warner Brothers had their plan, build a feature film around the pairing, update the animation with modern shading and lighting, and put Bugs back on the big screen before a whole generation forgot he existed. It worked beyond anyone's projections. The characters reached kids who had inherited them as Saturday morning background noise and handed them back as legitimate pop culture icons. Bugs Bunny outsold Mickey Mouse for 20 consecutive years, then 2 decades of reruns. Then Michael Jordan pulled him off the couch. Not a Looney Tunes director, not a franchise revival strategy, not a 50-year plan. A shoe commercial and a basketball player who needed each other at exactly the right moment.
Number 13. Jordan's superstition made basketball shorts longer. For 15 years, every time Michael Jordan stepped onto an NBA court, he was secretly wearing a pair of lucky college shorts underneath his uniform. Same pair, every game, the entire run. They were his University of North Carolina practice shorts. Carolina blue, worn when he won at UNC, and he refused to leave them behind when he turned professional. His reasoning was pure superstition. They'd been there when it worked, so they stayed. But there was a problem. To hide the Carolina blue peeking out from under the Bulls' red and black, Jordan approached Champion in 1987 and asked for longer game shorts, just a few extra inches, enough to conceal the layer underneath. Champion obliged. Jordan wore them. The longer silhouette caught on, first with Jordan himself, then with the Fab Five at Michigan, then with the NBA, which relaxed its uniform regulations to accommodate the new length. The entire league followed. Every kid in America followed the league. Baggy basketball shorts became one of the defining fashion statements of the 1990s. On the court, on the street, in every mall in the country, and they trace back directly to one man's superstition about a pair of college practice shorts. Space Jam put the confession right there on screen. Jordan tells the Looney Tunes, "Whatever you do, don't forget my North Carolina shorts. I wore them under my Chicago Bulls uniform every game." The Looney Tunes react with collective disgust. Jordan defends himself, "I washed them after every game." If you were in that theater in 1996, you would have laughed. What you didn't realize, what nobody realized, was that you were watching the origin story of every baggy basketball short worn on every court at every level for the next 30 years. The fashion revolution that reshaped how men dress from the waist down started with Michael Jordan being too superstitious to leave his college shorts at home.
Number 12. Jordan ignored Nike and created its biggest launch. The Air Jordan 11. Space Jam, black nubuck upper, patent leather mud guard, translucent sole, the kind of shoe that looks like it belongs in a different decade, wasn't supposed to exist yet when Jordan first put it on his feet. Nike's commercial rollout wasn't ready. The timing hadn't been approved. It was still a prototype. Jordan wore them anyway, in the 1995 Eastern Conference Finals against the Orlando Magic. Nike had explicitly told him not to. He laced them up and walked onto the court like he owned the building, which, functionally, he did. The same shoe appeared throughout Space Jam the following year. Nike didn't release it to the general public until December 2000, 4 years after the film. 4 years of every kid who saw that movie wanting a pair they couldn't buy. By the time the 2016 re-release arrived for the film's 20th anniversary, the demand had been building for 2 decades. Nike brand president Trevor Edwards addressed it in the company's Q3 2017 earnings call, the Space Jam. 11 re-release was, in his words, the largest and most successful shoe launch in the history of Nike. Number 11. Space Jam hid a Madonna joke in plain sight. Charles Barkley kneels in a church pew in Space Jam and makes a deal with God to get his basketball talent back. He lists his promises. "I'll never swear again. I'll never trash talk." Then he pauses. Then, "I won't go out with Madonna again." This is a real line. In the finished film, rated PG, playing in movie theaters packed with children. The Madonna reference is documented. Barkley and Madonna had a well-documented romantic involvement in the early 1990s. It was the kind of celebrity gossip that circulated in entertainment columns and late-night monologue jokes, and nowhere a 9-year-old would ever encounter it. Barkley was, and remains, married to Maureen Blumhardt, whom he wed in 1989. He is still married to her today. Warner Brothers put a confession about a celebrity relationship into a children's movie. Barkley read the line. Barkley agreed to the line. Barkley delivered the line on camera in front of a church full of extras. The kids in the theater heard a joke about not going out with someone and moved on. The parents froze for a half second and exchanged a look across the armrest. It's been sitting there for nearly 30 years. Barkley is still married. Madonna has not commented. Number 10. The Spike Lee version of Space Jam never happened. Joe Pytka told Entertainment Weekly in 2016 that he wanted Spike Lee to do a Polish on the Space Jam script. Lee was a friend. Pytka believed he would have added some stuff that would have been cooler. Warner Brothers said no. It goes back to 1992. Malcolm X ran over budget during production. Warner Brothers handed control to a completion bond company, which refused to approve any more expenditures and threatened to cut the film. Lee was being forced to shorten it, which he refused. Rather than abandon his vision, he went around them. He raised the completion money himself, calling prominent black artists and athletes and asking for gifts, no strings attached. Michael Jordan contributed, Oprah Winfrey contributed, Prince contributed, Magic Johnson contributed. Lee later said Jordan was his final call. He let slip how much Magic had given, and Jordan said, "Okay, I got you." The film finished. It opened. Warner Brothers had been embarrassed. Their response years later, barring Lee from a film that starred the very man who had helped him rescue Malcolm X. Jordan was used twice, once as Lee's lifeline when a studio tried to shut his film down, and then as the studio's instrument of revenge when they blocked Lee from the follow-up project. The man who helped Lee finish one of the most important films of the decade was used as a reason to keep Lee out of a cartoon basketball movie. Pytka was annoyed. Lee never made it onto the project. The Polish didn't happen, and viewers got the version of Space Jam that exists, which made $250 million, so Warner Brothers clearly wasn't losing sleep over the decision. Number 9. The Man Who Built Bugs. Bunny called Space Jam terrible. Chuck Jones called Space Jam terrible. That's the man who spent nearly 30 years creating, directing, and shaping the Looney Tunes characters, the person most responsible for who Bugs Bunny actually is, the rhythm of the character, the internal logic that makes him work. He watched the highest-grossing Looney Tunes film ever made and called it terrible. His critique wasn't about the animation quality or the special effects. It was about character logic. The entire premise of the film, Jones argued, violated the fundamental nature of Bugs Bunny. Bugs never recruits help. He never needs it. He handles problems alone, through wit and timing, and a particular brand of cheerful ruthlessness that Jones had spent decades calibrating. Jones's estimate, Bugs would have dispatched the Monstars himself in a single short in under 7 minutes. He saved his sharpest objection for Porky Pig. In one scene, Porky tells the audience, "I think I wet myself." Jones was precise about this. His exact words, "I can tell you, with the utmost confidence, Porky Pig would never say that." Not wouldn't, couldn't. Porky Pig does not wet himself. That's not who he is. And here's the uncomfortable part. Jones was right about the character logic, about what Bugs would and wouldn't do, about what Porky would and wouldn't say. If you've ever sat through even one original short, you know it. Bugs doesn't ask for help. That's the whole point of him. The film grossed $250.2 million. It brought the characters to a generation of kids who had never seen a classic short and probably never would. Number 8. The Looney Tunes, Heir Who Lost Bugs Bunny. When Space Jam went into production, Mel Blanc's son was booked to voice every single male Looney Tunes character in the film. That's the story that should have happened, and it didn't. Mel Blanc had voiced Bugs Bunny from 1940 until his death in 1989. 49 years, and also every other major Looney Tunes character, often in the same recording session, often talking to himself. Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, Tweety, Sylvester, Yosemite Sam, Elmer Fudd, Foghorn Leghorn, Marvin the Martian. One man, all of it. He was so singular that Warner Brothers gave him a unique on-screen credit, voice characterizations by Mel Blanc, something almost no voice actor received at the time. He died on July 10, 1989, and Warner Brothers had no real plan for what came next. Noel Blanc, Mel's son, publicly positioned for years as the natural successor, was originally booked to voice all 12 male characters in the film, the same arrangement his father had held for nearly half a century. He and Warner Brothers couldn't agree on a contract. The studio replaced him with 4 separate voice actors. Billy West, who had never played Bugs Bunny before, led the cast. Producer Ivan Reitman's stated ambition was to assemble a group that would outdo Mel Blanc. Whether that's confidence or provocation depends on your read of the situation. Most people watching the film had no idea anything had changed. The voices sounded right. The characters felt familiar. Nobody noticed the gap. Number 7, the Space Jam court that built a Bulls dynasty. Warner Brothers built Michael Jordan a full basketball facility on their Burbank studio lot. Not a practice area, a facility. The hardwood floor was borrowed from Long Beach State University. There was a putting green, big screen televisions, an industrial air conditioning system. They called it the Jordan Dome, and they put it in a parking lot. After 12-hour filming days, Jordan ran full-court pickup games until 10 o'clock at night. Kobe Bryant came. He was 16 years old, hadn't played an NBA game yet, and he came to compete. Magic Johnson came. Reggie Miller came. Dennis Rodman came. Arnold Schwarzenegger watched from the sideline. According to Nate Bellamy, the film's technical advisor, those pickup games were the reason Jordan agreed to sign Rodman. Jordan had been skeptical. Rodman was volatile, unpredictable, the kind of personality that could fracture a locker room. But watching him play every night in the Dome, Jordan recalibrated. Bellamy put it plainly. I think if the Dome didn't happen, I don't know if that deal would have gone through. Rodman signed with the Bulls. They went 72-10 in 1995-96 and won the championship. 3 more titles followed. Then there's Reggie Miller. Miller was at the Dome regularly that summer. He and Jordan went at each other every night. As Miller later told Sports Illustrated, it was some of the best games. There were no officials. It was a little more rugged and raw. That competitive tension, Miller said, didn't begin in the 1998 Eastern Conference Finals. It had been building since those summer nights in a parking lot in Burbank. Number 6, Jordan wanted Murray. Murray made him call. Bill Murray heard from approximately 13 different people that Michael Jordan really wanted him in Space Jam. Producers, assistants, mutual friends. The message kept coming through intermediaries, in the way that messages always come through intermediaries when the person sending them doesn't want to be the one asking. Murray waited every time. He knew exactly what was happening. He later described it to Travis and Jason Kelce on their podcast with characteristic precision. That son of a beaks is just twisting knowing he's got to ask me himself. A 3-time NBA champion had to personally telephone a comedian and ask for a cameo in a cartoon movie. Murray let him sit with that for a while, then he took the call. When Murray arrived on set, he asked Pitka one question about how the green screen technology worked, how Jordan was acting against characters that weren't there. Pitka explained it. Murray's eyes, by Pitka's account, lit up. He crossed the set, found producer Ivan Reitman, his Ghostbusters director, and within the same afternoon had talked his way from a single golf cameo into the film's climactic final basketball sequence. Murray's explanation for how his character got there is delivered to Daffy Duck, who asks how he ended up in a basketball game against aliens. Murray's answer, "Producer's a friend of mine. He sent a Teamster to drop me off." A joke about Reitman and, per the film's animation co-director Bruce W. Smith, he was telling the truth. That's the funny part of that joke, written hours before they shot it. Number 5, Space Jam's biggest song has no clean ending. I Believe I Can Fly was everywhere. Released on the Space Jam soundtrack in 1996, it hit number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, reached number 1 on the R&B chart for 6 non-consecutive weeks, and won 3 Grammy Awards: Best Male R&B Vocal Performance, Best R&B Song, and Best Song Written for Visual Media. For the better part of a decade, it was the default soundtrack of American aspiration. Played at graduations, weddings, school recitals, sports montages, halftime shows, and church services across the country. R. Kelly was found guilty in September 2021 and is serving 30 years. In 2019, ABC quietly removed the song from an episode of a television spin-off before it aired. No announcement, no statement. They just cut it. The song remains on major streaming platforms as of this writing. It is still listed on the Space Jam soundtrack. It is still the most recognizable track on one of the most beloved children's movie soundtracks ever released. There is no version of this fact with a clean ending. The song is real. The feeling it gave people is real. The film it came from is beloved. The man who wrote and performed it is serving 3 decades behind bars. These things are all simultaneously true, and none of them cancel the others out. Number 4. Space Jam's weirdest controversy was Lola Bunny. Lola Bunny debuted in Space Jam. She did not exist before this film. Warner Brothers created her specifically for it. A love interest for Bugs, a serious basketball player, a character who didn't take nonsense from anyone on or off the court. They also, by animator Tony Cervone's own admission on the record in 1996, deliberately designed her to appeal to a grown-up audience. When Space Jam: A New Legacy went into production in the late 2000s, director Malcolm D. Lee watched the original film and was, by his account, caught off guard by what he found. He described the original Lola as Betty Boop mixed with Jessica Rabbit, and said he hadn't expected a character in a children's film to be so deliberately designed to appeal to older viewers. He gave Lola a full jersey and baggy shorts for 2021. The online backlash was immediate and loud. Grown adults, people who had been children when the original film came out, were furious that a cartoon rabbit had been made less attractive. The discourse ran for weeks. Think pieces were written. Reddit threads hit tens of thousands of upvotes. Nobody's proud of that. Warner Brothers designed a cartoon rabbit to appeal to grown men in 1996. The sequel director quietly fixed it in 2021, and the internet treated it like a cultural emergency. That's where we landed. Number 3, Space Jam. Almost had Mickey Mouse as referee. Mickey Mouse was supposed to referee the big game. Warner Brothers had a handshake deal with Disney that guaranteed it. Disney said no anyway. In 1988, Disney needed to borrow Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck for Who Framed Roger Rabbit, a film that required cartoon characters from multiple studios to share the screen. Warner Brothers lent them under a verbal gentleman's agreement. Whenever Warner Brothers needed a similar favor returned, Disney would deliver. 8 years later, when Space Jam went into production, Warner Brothers called it in. They wanted Mickey Mouse as the neutral referee for the climactic basketball game, a cartoon character from a rival universe judging an alien game. New Disney management said no. The agreement belonged to the old regime, and the new regime didn't consider themselves bound by a handshake. The job went to Marvin the Martian. Warner Brothers was, according to multiple sources, annoyed but not entirely surprised. And they responded the only way a studio in that position can respond, by writing the grudge straight into the film. Daffy Duck asks the team, what kind of Mickey Mouse organization would name their team the Ducks? A direct dig at Disney's Anaheim Ducks franchise. Jordan's dog in the film is named Charles, as in Barkley. These things are not accidents. Number 2, the forgotten promo site that outlived everything. SpaceJam.com has been online since 1996. Same star background, same image maps. Nobody took it down. 5 Warner Brothers marketing employees built it under deadline pressure when the film launched. They did their job, moved on, and forgot about it entirely. The site sat there. The internet went through several complete revolutions. The .com boom, broadband, social media, smartphones, streaming, and SpaceJam.com did not change, not once. Same star background, same navigation, same GIFs loading at 1996 speeds. At the bottom of the original sitemap, the team had written a note. Never on the internet have so few worked so hard to bring you so much in so little time. It's still there, has been since 1996. In 2010, a Reddit user noticed the site had been unchanged for 14 years. The post went viral. TechCrunch wrote it up. The site got more traffic than it had probably seen since Jordan was still in the playoffs. It went viral again in 2015, again in 2019. The Internet Archive cited it as a rare example of a major corporate site surviving completely intact across 25 years of web history. Unchanging, unshifting. A promotional website that should have been taken offline before Y2K had instead been generating continuous press and cultural nostalgia for the franchise for 15 years. When Space Jam: A New Legacy finally went into production, the original film had never actually left the conversation. in part because its website kept pulling people back in. The URL redirected to the sequel's promotional page in 2021. 5 people built something in a hurry and forgot to shut it off. It might be the most effective piece of film marketing in the history of the internet, entirely by accident. Number 1, Space Jam. Opened with the loss. Nobody talked about. The film opens at night. A young Michael Jordan is shooting hoops in his backyard past midnight. His father James comes outside. They talk about Michael's dreams, North Carolina, the NBA, baseball. It's a quiet scene, warm, 2 people who love each other, up past when they should be. James Jordan was taken from his family on July 23, 1993. A robbery on a North Carolina highway while he slept in his car. He was 56 years old. 3 months later, Jordan retired from basketball. He told the press he'd lost his desire to play. He later said more. Losing his father had broken something. He had no interest in continuing without him in the stands. And there was one other thing. In that opening scene, young Michael tells his father that after basketball, he wants to play baseball, just like his dad. His father beams, so Jordan played baseball, a .202 batting average across 127 games in the minor leagues, learning a sport from scratch alone, in a way that made sense to nobody except a son trying to do something he'd told his father he would do. Warner Brothers then made a film that opens with that exact father-son moment, that uses Jordan's baseball detour as its emotional foundation. That ends with Jordan returning to a minor league baseball game to a standing ovation from the stands. Joe Pytka filmed a different ending, Jordan hitting a walk-off home run modeled on The Natural, with his son giving him the signal from the stands. Pytka later said he still doesn't know exactly why it was cut. Reitman admitted to him they never quite knew how to end the film. A gift, on screen, to a father who never made it to a game, gone from the final cut. Jordan hated making this film. He told a basketball camp Q&A in 2006 that trying to act with characters drawn in later was brutal, and he had no interest in doing it again. He showed up every day anyway. He let them use his father's story to open it. And there you have it. 15 facts about Space Jam that go a lot deeper than the cartoon. Which one landed hardest for you? Tell us in the comments. And tell us what we missed, because there are always more stories underneath. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, so you don't miss the next one. Until next time,